History tells us that whenever wealth disparity becomes too great, you run into this situation, almost unavoidably, you run into this situation where you see hungry hands rising up from the masses, wanting distribution of the assets that they believe have become too concentrated among too small a group of people. And you could take a number of different viewpoints on this. Certainly, we see that throughout history and especially right now. But what we're going to talk about today is what I believe is a false fractal of this phenomenon inside Cardano and also in society as a whole. If the only fractals you're trying to discover are the ones where your current bag of crypto is actually suddenly inside a much bigger bag of crypto, or if you're finding value in these videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies DRep address and the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. All right, thank you. Thank you for joining, everybody. Let's see who's here. Bindocam, welcome. Fly over me. Cardano for the win. Dunky Ned. Kim Cha-ching. Mission Zambia. Good morning. Flying Hambone says ADA has been my main over the last 4 years, and I have as much as I'd want to hold if it's going to be a global phenomenon. I'll let it go to zero before I sell. I'm currently only buying other stuff. B117. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Otis Fritjof, the Flying Hambone. I'm 100% with you. Good evening. Good evening, Otis Fritjof. B117 says the charts lie. The truth, 12 dead by bear attacks in Japan this year. ADA equals founded in Japan. You know, I cannot help but read every single article about this. I've been amazed right since the start of this bear surge, this bear attack surge in Japan. It's, I don't know why. This is fascinating to me. I can't believe this is happening. But indeed, bears are attacking in Japan. Cardano, thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. Here's a question. You guys still mining? Who's still mining? Who's still mining out there? J. Marie, thanks for being here. James Syracuse is here. Mark is here. Mark says, I am hungry. Yep, I think we all are. All right. Uncle Thanos, thanks for joining. Rulo, hola. Super Tight Pro West says, let's go. AOS, DRep, and staker and merch owner. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Jose Cano, thanks for joining. Jerry H, good morning. Good morning. Emilio's here. Hey, Emilio. Marco is here. Marco is here just to say hello. Need to go to sleep. Fiat mine tomorrow. Good luck in the fiat mines. Thank you. Thank you for dropping by, Marco. I appreciate it. Bhavya Jane is here. Hello. Gabe Carr Harris is here. Super Tight Pro S is the API is killing the web mining client. We're going to get to that. We're actually going to address that in just a second, pretty soon here. So let's set this up. So I said that I think what we're going to talk about tonight is actually a false fractal, and I'm going to explain what I mean by that. But first, we have to talk about the bigger pattern that some might accuse Cardano of holding a miniature nested version of this just inside Cardano, which is inside crypto, which is inside greater society. But first, let's look at the bigger pattern, this bigger pattern we're talking about here. So here's a post that Chamath, many of you probably know who Chamath is. Super smart guy. We've talked about him many times on the channel. You know, maybe some of the things he's said on the channel, I think he probably, not on this channel, but some of the things he said on the podcast, he's often a part of. I think maybe he regrets, and probably it made people in crypto angry, but smart guy, has a lot of good ideas. But more importantly, in this post, he says, here is Peter Thiel's email to Zuckerberg and Andreessen in January 2020. So here's the email. This is Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel says, I certainly would not suggest that our policy should be to embrace millennial attitudes unreflectively. I would be the last person to advocate for socialism, But when 70% of millennials say they are pro-socialist, we need to do better than simply dismiss them by saying that they are stupid or entitled or brainwashed. We should try and understand why. And from the perspective of broken generational compact, there seems to be a pretty straightforward answer to me, namely that when one has too much student debt or if housing is too unaffordable, then one will have negative capital for a long time and or find it very hard to start accumulating capital in the form of real estate. And if one has no stake in the capitalist system, then one may well turn against it. I think this is very true. What you find, the people who embrace sort of, you know, philosophies that are antagonistic to capitalism, what you find is those kinds of philosophies are always going to be embraced much more heavily among cadres of individuals who wouldn't be the ones losing out if capitalism were somehow overturned. If society were thrown on its head and there was a redistribution of assets, either a small one or a large one, a tiny compartmentalized one or a universal one. The people who are going to be in favor of that, of course, are always going to be the people who wouldn't be the ones losing. They wouldn't be on the losing end of that. They'd be on the gaining end of that. So I mean, this is the reason why when you walk into a freshman year dorm room, you're much more likely to see the Che poster there than if you walk into a finance office in Manhattan. Like one of those two is going to have more Che posters, right? So Peter Thiel, of course, I believe is correct here. But the real question we should ask is, why does this happen? Why did, in Peter Thiel's words, why was the generational compact broken? Why do people have too much student debt? Why is housing too unaffordable? And the person who was quoting this post actually proposes an answer to this, which may or may not be right, but I think it's worth thinking about in the context of the things, one little thing, it's a small thing, but one little thing that's happening right now in Cardano and also bigger things that are constantly happening in crypto. So this poster's Rock Chartrand says, people are turning against a system they never actually experienced. The conditions Till describes aren't the result of capitalism working too well. They're the result of capitalism being slowly replaced by policy-driven scarcity. This is interesting. He's saying capitalism does not produce the scarcity levels we're seeing. Policy produces the scarcity levels we're seeing. Student debt didn't rise because markets ran wild. It rose because government guaranteed the loans. Housing didn't become inaccessible because property rights failed. It became inaccessible because zoning boards, permitting regimes, and planning authorities restricted supply by design. Wages didn't stagnate because capital exploited labor. They stagnated because taxes, inflation, and regulation drag wealth creation down while inflating the cost of living. So the resentment is real. The generational break is real, but the target is misplaced. People are losing faith, not in capitalism, but in a system that wears capitalism's language while operating as coordinated political control. Ownership was throttled not by markets, but by policies that prevent individuals from accumulating and applying capital. If you remove those restraints, opportunity expands. If you double down with more control, you get collapse. So I think this is largely right. You may disagree with sort of like this rhetoric, this specific rhetoric, how it's presented, but I think he's right. I mean, what we've seen is the world, and this is really the entire developed world, sort of throw off any notion of heeding the warnings of the Austrian economists, right? They're like Hayek, von Mises, maybe we don't care about that right now. And so ever since they began this crazy money printing adventure, we sort of embarked on this journey. And 2008, some would argue earlier, but 2008, it really became apparent what was going on. And we've just manipulated the supply of money. We've manipulated the supply of money, and all these other things were going on as well. It's, I think I would argue it's much harder to build a neighborhood of houses in 2025 than it probably was in 1955. It's probably much easier to rack up 6 figures worth of educational debt 2025 than it was in 1955. So it is true. I mean, in sports, we always say that the rules make the game. Any particular sports game can be completely changed by slightly different rules. And the same is true with economics and society. When you slightly change the rules, things change. When you go from 15 trillion M2 that we sort of had before COVID to 20 trillion M2 after COVID, everything's sort of changed. It's like, shocker, you increased the money supply by that much, over 20 million after 15 trillion previous, you increase the money supply by that much. No one should be shocked when the price of houses become so inflated and wages can't catch up that no one can actually buy a house. So I think this guy makes good sense. And the real theme behind this, I think, is not so much the, undying, everlasting argument between socialism and capitalism, but I think it's more that what we want to create incentives for people to build the things we want to build, right? If you want people to own houses, you have to have policies that create incentives for people to do the things that will allow them to own houses. And you can't do macro things like increasing M2 by that much, things that are going to make it impossible for people to own houses. You have to put in place policies that are going to create the right incentives and the right environment for your target goals to actually occur. So the reason why I'm talking about that being the underlying theme here and not the stuff people normally talk about when they're discussing socialism versus capitalism, but it's because of this that's happening right now in crypto. So here's a poll by our very own Thomas Kirkpatrick that I think has been copied by many other people in the last couple of days. And basically he's asking, should the scavenger mine be single browser immediately versus final day? So you could argue, if you were sort of skeptical, some people might try to argue, hey, this is the same thing. This is the same thing as, the socialist factions of the world wanting to punish people who are out competing them by putting in place policies that would restrict them from out competing everybody else. But I think the important thing here is the incentives. So we have to ask, what's the purpose of the scavenger mine? At first we were asking questions like, hey, is this actually proof of useful work? Are we actually like helping astronomers calculate the trajectory of comets like 3I Atlas? Is that what's going on here? And we found out, no, this is not actually proof of useful work. We're actually just doing this ash maze algorithm hashing, trying to find a number to input into the algorithm that produces a digest that is lower than the target value. It's really the work we're doing solving these little cryptographic puzzles. It's not useful work in the sense that we're helping advance science or something like that. So the conclusion you would come to is really that the purpose of the scavenger mine is just to increase decentralization in the holdings of Midnight. So some people might disagree. Some people might have some different take on that. But as near as I can tell, the whole purpose of the scavenger mine is just to increase decentralization. I noticed today, even on X today, people were talking about that as a vanity metric. If you watch this channel, decentralization is the main thing I'm interested in. The main thing that made me feel strongly about crypto from the very first time I read the Satoshi white paper was decentralization. That's the main thing in crypto to me. It's not being able to do DeFi without being under the thumb of the SEC, any of those things. It's not NFTs, right? It's not meme coins. It's just decentralization, which, granted, it sort of underpins all those things anyways, but decentralization is the main thing. So if we say, okay, the purpose of the scavenger mine is decentralization, we should put in place policies that promote decentralization, then I think the people responding to these polls, and if you don't like this sample size of 24 votes, you can look at this one. NightSwap Labs did a very similar poll They did a very similar poll with 168 votes, and it had the same result. People overwhelmingly voted kill off the API mining, just make scavenger mining browser only. And I don't know about the technical practicality of this, but I think if decentralization is the goal of the scavenger mine, we should put in place policies that promote that. However, I also believe in sort of, people getting the benefit of the bargain they made. And so it kind of matters if at the start of the scavenger mine, Midnight, the Midnight Network, and the Midnight Foundation, if they made it clear to everybody, hey, for the next 21 days, we're going to have a scavenger mine, and you can mine this over browser or you can mine this over API. And then a bunch of people said, oh, okay, well, I know I can kill it if I mine over API. So I'm going to invest a bunch of time, energy, and maybe even money into building out a killer mining setup over API. I'll be happy to do that to contribute to the mining of the scavenger mine, and I'm expecting to be rewarded, commensurately. If all of a sudden somebody went to that effort and they pumped a bunch of energy into creating an API mining, regime for themselves, and then all of a sudden we killed it off, that's not really fair either because they didn't really get the benefit of the bargain. The bargain was, hey, you'll participate in the scavenger mine and you can rely on the following set of conditions for you to do that. And if the condition was you're allowed to mine by API, it seems like maybe it's not fair to cut them off if they've been relying on that from the start. If, however, Midnight never intended for anyone to mine by API, then that would be a different story. If the mining by API is something that the Midnight Foundation never intended, if they never told anybody that was something you could do, if nobody really had any basis to contend that they were relying on, sort of a promise from the Midnight Foundation that they could mine by API, if that wasn't a bargain that was made, then I think they're not really missing out on the benefit of the bargain if API mining were taken away. But let me know in the comments, what does everybody think? Is it fair? Obviously, the polls show that almost everybody, 71% of people by this poll, agree we should just kill off the API mining. So, of course, the people who are going to say no to that are the people who are probably API mining. And we already know the notice already came out that API mining would not be allowed on the final day. So it's sort of, the issue is sort of already on the table. Should API mining be allowed? But let me know in the comments. Do people think it's unfair to take away API mining if people put a bunch of energy and time into setting up API mining for themselves? Is this just like all of us who are being outcompeted? Are we just trying to put in place policies to prevent these API miners from outcompeting us? Or is it actually in the interest of decentralization that we kill off the API mining so that the night that is out there gets more widely distributed on a decentralized basis? Let me know. Let me know what you think. Uncle Thanos says, still mining fiat. Haven't sold merch in a while. Used to sell merch. Maybe we will again. Maybe we will again. Haven't sold merch in a while, but I actually kind of liked the merch. I liked the merch, so maybe we'll do it again. Mark says still mining. James, thank you for saying that. James says this show makes the last hour in the mines and my ride home so nice. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, Cardano Universe. Con 9072. Let's go. Let's go. Mission Zambia is still mining. Good. I don't know. Good question. Good question. I supported it strongly. That's a very controversial issue in the U.S. though. It is very, very controversial. But I would definitely like everyone to have healthcare. It's like that's a very, very big debate though, whether or not sort of going halfway drove the price of healthcare, or it's I would all I'll say about that is I would very much like it if everybody had healthcare here. That would be great. Cardano Universe says Ask Rock. John Polo says yes, sir. Let's go, John Polo. Let's go. Yo, Rock is preaching. Thanks for sharing that. Fly Over Me says, don't overlook how big the Bitcoin OS project could be for Cardano. Their latest AMA was discussing them building a UTXO alliance with Cardano being the smart contract leader. Sounds good. I think we'll take it. We'll take being the smart contract leader. The whole BTC connection to Cardano just makes me think that all these ETFs holding BTC will finally get a chance to earn yield on their BTC instead of just holding for price appreciation. Huge. Yep. I think that's a big part of the argument. It is a Hegelian dialectic. It is. It is. I mean, you don't get a Zoran Mondani City Hall without the disenfranchisement of those voters. So whether they were rightly or wrongly disenfranchised, whether it was policy driven or something else, we can debate. But definitely you had a problem and a reaction. I would argue we haven't yet reached the solution, but I'm sure his voters would say we're at step 3 there. But it is a Hegelian dialectic for sure. Every MBA will feel like a genius for explaining to the fund managers that they can earn interest on their BTC holdings. True, trustly true. Mission Zambia poses that human greed is reliable. Yep. At Cardano says they said try communism. What could go wrong? That's my feeling. I mean, just so I'm trying to present both sides of the argument here, but just so everybody knows, I am a hardcore. If the amount of times I mention Austrian economics doesn't indicate it, I'm a hardcore capitalist for sure. So this very much resonates with me. Captain Cardano, Thomas Kirkpatrick, we just covered your post. Just so you know, we just covered your post. I don't know if you saw that. Daniil says, I accept decentralized night donations to my decentralized wallets. I mean, that's the thing that makes it hard. It makes it hard for me to feel like we can even I feel ungrateful for even discussing how we think the Midnight Network should be distributing their free ducats to us. I mean, it's free, so I feel like we're looking at a gift horse in the mouth here. But it is interesting to discuss, which is why I think it's fair to discuss. Okay. Will Mofo Show says, hey, OS, I never catch you live, but I do every morning. I hope you read the comments because I'm usually asleep. Thanks for doing what you do. I personally really appreciate it. Let's go. Let's go. And he gave us the let's go whisper. Thank you. Will, thank you so much for watching, being a part of the Army Spies here. Cardano Universe, I want to see decentralized voting ledgers. Yeah, me too. Cardano's governance voting is a decentralized voting ledger. Yep. Thomas Kirkpatrick says, obviously it should be single browser only. Yeah, and your poll, people definitely agreed. I pulled up your poll. I don't know if you saw it, but I had your poll on the screen right here, as well as this one. I went to the night swap poll also, so people could see it wasn't just one poll and just a sample size of 24 votes. It was an N of 168 as well on this other one. So if you kill the formal API, I expect they will just create informal API using machine run the browser engine, not hard, without proof of human. It's irrelevant. Yep, I agree with that. I totally agree. What is API mining? You can mine by API, basically. I like taking away the last week. There's a vote for just taking away the last week. The better question is, why would Midnight want API miners? What is the benefit of having API versus single browser? That was my first question. Otis Fritjov. That was my first question. They did not set up the server capacity to support API mining and a stable web client interface. That is the problem. Yep, I agree. We obviously have bandwidth problems. We obviously have capacity problems given the amount of mining that's going on. So, but again, I also feel like, it's kind of like they're free. They're giving us free tokens. So I try not to complain too hard. Cardano Universe says, I can't wait for the day when I will be able to vote for my cell phone email program from the comfort of my home. Me too. I'm with you on that. Yeah, there's some people harvesting some intense amounts of night for sure. Gary H is still mining. Okay. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people when they saw that there were people running 600 virtual machines. I think there are a lot of people who are 600 they were running 600 instances of the miner somehow. I think there were a lot of people who bailed after that for sure. Let's see. Super Tight Pro S says I was running 24/24 mining success the first 4 days and it ground to a halt. Yeah, I sort of, this is how I sort of feel. Again, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if it's a technical, if it's technically practical to even try to restrict the people doing this. But I sort of agree. If the goal of the scavenger mine is to increase decentralization in the holdings of the Knight asset, then you should promote policies that promote decentralization. So that makes perfect sense to me. Yeah, this is a good point too. I hear talk of some API miners making 5,000 Knight a day. If true, it's like holding 12,000 ADA. Yeah, I mean that's the other thing that I keep hitting on. The other thing I keep hitting on is that the allocation we got for our ADA holdings was so huge comparatively. Like the amount we're mining, if you just mine single browser, the amount you're mining is so tiny. And even this 5K is like, even the 5K Knight a day is like holding 12,000 ADA. So, it's a lot. It's a lot to make in a day, at current ADA prices. But the allocation we got during the regular glacier drop allocation was huge compared to what people are doing mining, except for these numbers. Like obviously, anybody would be happy to make that amount of money per day. Super tight. Thank you. Thank you for listening and being a part of the Army of Spies. Yeah, that goes all the way back to that first St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, the first episode was on St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, thank you for being here all the time. I appreciate it. Optics is why they allowed that. Yeah, I think it was probably a policy decision based on permissionlessness. It was sort of like, I'm sure the question came up and the answer, a bunch of people sitting around a desk, sitting around a table, were probably like, oh yeah, let them mine however they want. Like our first goal has to be to get as many people mining as possible. So let them mine however they want. So now they've definitely got enough. I won't say people mining. They have a lot of people mining, but they've definitely got a lot of miners running on the network. They definitely have enough miners running on the network. I think now we need to optimize for humans, So, and to your point, single browser would probably be, people will cheat. People would cheat that. I won't even say cheat. People will find workarounds for that. And proof of human is probably the only way to really keep it. But for a short period, 21 days, maybe going single browser would, I can't help but think that would increase decentralization of holdings. Okay. Lovey says, hi AOS, just finished in the dark and dingy fiat mines, kicking back and having a couple of brews, listening to the legendary AOS. Thank you. Thank you for joining. I appreciate it. Emilio, we're getting free tokens. Let's not find a reason to fight over it. I agree. That's how I feel. I think it's awesome that, the allocation we got was awesome as ADA holders. And the fact that the scavenger mine is so permissionless is awesome also. This is like one of the best things I've seen go down in crypto. This is the best type of airdrop. Both the snapshot allocation and this one have been the best airdrops I've seen. Okay, Xfile Fletch says, still mining on my 2011 MacBook Pro, although the wife's Dell laptop is outpacing it. Ban API for the last 7 days. Maybe that's a good middle road position. Maybe that's a good, kind of middling position. This is a good point at Cardano. At Cardano says, I asked in the Discord, do I need technical experience to mine Knight? They said no. Turns out you do. So yeah, it seems like you don't need much technical experience to mine some amount of Knight, but to compete with the API miners, you do. Yeah, today was not my best mining day. Part of that was that I was not tending to my miners. I was out doing other things all day. Um, okay, let's move on. I think we've discussed this. The point I was trying to make is that I think there are arguments on both sides of the API mining, no API mining, single browser versus everything else. I think there are, non-ridiculous arguments on both sides of those. And I think it's very different than the arguments around sort of more socialist style distribution of assets versus more pure capitalism and the reasons why we're seeing disillusionment with capitalism right now. I just want to point out that this midnight thing going on in Cardano is not a fractal of the larger sort of, trend toward socialism in some quarters, because I don't think this is that. I think this is just a question of what policies for the scavenger mine are going to promote what end goals. So it is that permissionlessness and decentralization are sort of cutting against each other here. My $300 Dell gained 20 night today. That's pretty good. That's not bad. That's not bad. Okay, now let's look at some now we've kind of explored that little topic. Let's look at something else. And I think this is pretty optimistic. I think this is actually pretty good and something we don't talk about enough in Cardano. So let's look at 1 year. Let's look at what's happened over the last year among some of our near peers. So 1 year chart, we see Ethereum right now only up 17%. If you bought Ethereum a year ago, you only saw 17%, which would be great in most markets, equities, everywhere else. Fantastic. In crypto, nothing. Solana, negative 17%. Solana, negative 17%. Bitcoin, the mighty Bitcoin. Okay, almost 36%. 36% up in Bitcoin. However, you also see posts like this. I thought this was interesting. I sort of knew this day was coming for a long time, but today is sort of the day, or right now is the time, I should say. The biggest bet I've ever taken was on MicroStrategy in 2025. Turns out it was literally the worst possible bet I could have taken. If I invested in literally anything else, I would have made a ton of money. Thank you, Michael Saylor, for creating a stock that only goes down. This is the enormous image he posted of this chart. Negative 31.6 year to date. So we talk a lot. I mean, Michael Saylor is still certainly kind of an philosophical hero in crypto quarters. But Bitcoin up 35%, MicroStrategy down 31.6%. So even the mighty Bitcoin only up 35. The mighty MicroStrategy not doing so hot, and shareholders are mad. Then we look at Cardano. Let's take a peek at Cardano. How is Cardano doing? On the year, up 44, more than Ethereum, more than Solana, more than Bitcoin, more than MicroStrategy. Cardano is doing better than all of these ecosystems. And if we think about ecosystems that are, if the numbers we see, if there's a lot of criticism, there are some, I'll put it this way, there's some ecosystems and there's a lot of criticism. They think the numbers are manipulated. The price and market cap of these ecosystems seems not to match what must be the reality from the outside looking in. And we also see other weird aberrations with some of these ecosystems, like Tron, for instance. Tron somehow is a top 10 ecosystem. And yet we see things like this. The founder of Tron doesn't even believe in his own ecosystem as much as he believes in other ecosystems. This is Arkham saying Justin Sun just staked over 150 million of Ethereum. Justin Sun withdrew 154 million of ETH from Aave and deposited it to Lido staking. Here's the important part. He currently holds 534 million Ether, even more than he holds in Tron. 534 million versus 519 million. So over the last year, we've done better than those ecosystems we just talked about. And other ecosystems ahead of us, there are these weird things about them, like Tron. Tron theoretically has a bigger market cap than us, and yet the founder of Tron holds more Ether than he does Tron. Doesn't really make any sense. So Thomas says, fair point. I just lean more towards proof of human, as many parameters against gaming the system would be preferred. Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of hard not to arrive at the proof of human idea, right? If you think about a lot of the things we do in crypto, it's hard not to arrive at proof of human. But it seems like the tricky part is getting to proof of human without building the panopticon. That's the hard part. How do you do proof of human without the panopticon? You know, we've got an ecosystem with retinal scans right now, and it's very controversial. So it's like, how do you do proof of human while not also building out the blueprint, at least the blueprint for the panopticon? Okay. But you notice we just looked at them. We did not draw any Fibonaccios. There were 0 Fibonaccios. We just looked at them. Sub-Zero says a bot went live earlier today that was a deep fake of Charles doubling ADA and ETH. I never see. Oh, if you run into that again, tag me in it. I would like to see this deep fake of Charles. I would like to see that. Cardano Universe says gold down. Give it a couple days. Yeah, I mean, the funniest thing about all these, here's one of the reasons why all the chart stuff is so misleading. Look what's going to happen. Look what's going to happen in a couple of days to Cardano. And I'm mentioning this because everybody should be prepared for this if you look at the yearly chart ever. So what's going to happen is we're going to climb this little hill. And by the end of November, if the price has not gone up massively, we're going to be deeply, deeply negative here. So that's kind of why I was bringing this up right now, just to show everybody the sort of the last moment when we can make those same statements. But I mean, this is one of the reasons why the charts are so deceptive, why people take meaning from the charts that's not really there. Because in just a couple of weeks, we're gonna climb this whole hill, and then these yearly numbers are gonna look very, very different. This is the reason I think it's really true, though. This is the point that I'm trying to make. We're just better than all those other ecosystems. We're just better. Okay. Oh, this is a good question. So Mission Zambia says, did anyone else get Bill? I think as Cardano holders, we shouldn't let someone like Will Shatner fail on Cardano. That will not be a good look for us. You know, I think the problem was it's like such a niche audience. Like, I believe that was a one-man theater piece. Like, man, the number of people who are interested in, you know, sort of like Broadway is pretty limited already. And then it's a one-man Broadway show, even more limited. Then you've got, it kind of has to fall within the Captain Kirk fandom thing, even more limited. Like, it's really cool that Stuff did it. It's very cool that they landed that, but it is pretty niche. So it's kind of a Venn diagram of different interests have to converge there. Flying Hambone says, been running Glacier Drop Scavenger Mine daily. New challenges drop hourly, but performance dips unless I restart around 7 p.m. Eastern. You said this last night, and I was going to try it. I was going to try that tonight. Didn't quite happen, but I end up kind of refreshing and restarting, you know, kind of like probably maybe like 3 times a day on average, 3 times. Maybe I'm underestimating, but I think like 3 times a day. So, okay, that's good to know. I'm gonna try to pay more attention tomorrow around 7 p.m. Eastern, though. So thanks for pointing that out. Would have been cool if DIDs were rolled out alongside the scavenger mine. Now we're talking. Okay, if it wasn't really like retinal scan style proof of human, but it was just DIDs. If we just had a Tala Prism, if it was just a Tala Prism, if they had rolled out a Tala Prism at the same time as launching Midnight, that would have been interesting. But, like I actually agree. I agree strongly with you. That would have been very cool. But Charles would have faced so much controversy. People would have claimed he was trying to enroll everybody in Cardano in his, personal database that he was going to somehow abuse in the future. People would have definitely leveled those kind of charges. So there would have been a downside for IOG and for Charles. I mean, IOG wearing their midnight hat. They actually seem to be totally different people. So I'll say, Midnight, the totally unrelated to IOG entity Midnight. There definitely would have been some controversy around that, but I think you make a good point. It would have been very, very cool if like Atala Prism digital identity would have been rolled out to make Night happen. That would have been very cool, but it would have been controversial. People would have complained for sure. Hi there. Do we have any news about Hosky game and when if it comes out eventually? Charles' pitch sounded super exciting. You're talking about Quantum Hosky? Yeah, the thing with the brain cells, hooked up to the game, it all sounds so wild. It sounds very ambitious. I'll say that it sounds very ambitious. I don't know too much about it because it sounds so incredibly ambitious. But if it all comes true, that'll be cool. How important would it be for Cardano to integrate with Chainlink? It depends on who you ask. So definitely everybody who's really into DeFi really wants, sort of the universal oracle. There's definitely very strong support for that. I think what's more interesting to me is the Oracle use cases that don't just apply to DeFi. I think those are the really interesting parts. And to be honest with you, it's always been like lurking in the shadows, the possibility of Chainlink integration. I really haven't put much like research time or thought into it so far, just because it's always seemed so remote. It's always been there. We've always known we wanted it, but it seems so remote. I haven't put much thought or research into it, but when I do, the thing I'm most interested in is sort of like if we had really, really, if we had a lot of like Oracle utility, what kinds of other more like real world asset use cases could, emerge? That's what I would be interested in. Okay. Tom Stanley says, I just saw the deep fake with a QR code. We are so back. That's a good point. We haven't seen one in a long time, have we? We have not seen the fake Charles videos with the QR codes. If anybody doesn't know, if you see a Charles video and there's any kind of an address they want you to go visit or a QR code, they're definitely trying to steal your money. Those are definitely thieves. That's definitely the robbery forest trying to reach into Cardano. So do not follow those QR codes. I know you already know that, Tom, but for anybody else who doesn't understand, those are fake. If Charles wants you to send him, 5 ADA and he'll send you 100, that is definitely fake and thievery. Speaking of real world assets, I would like to know more about Palm. I would like to know more about it. I would like to spend some time finding out more about Palm. I could not get past the coin name dollar bill. I kind of agreed with you. William Shatner is a man of a certain age, though, so I think the puns were probably a given. Those were probably going to happen no matter what. At Cardano says, I bought Bill because I like William Shatner, hilarious in Boston Legal. True. Charles is going to get complaints no matter what he does. Yeah, I think you're right. You know what? I think you convinced me. I think he probably just should have gone for it. He probably just should have rolled out Atala Prism DIDs for anybody who wanted to do it. it could have done the ZK thing. So you just have to prove you're a human without, exposing yourself to being enrolled in, any kind of conspiracy theory-esque global enslavement spreadsheet. You know what I mean? So I think there are ways that it could have been done, and he probably just should have done it because people are gonna throw shade his way no matter what, unfortunately. DMV asked me if I want the RFID chip in my enhanced driver's license. Wow. Do we need USDC? Do we need it? Question mark. Do we want it? I think definitely yes. Definitely yes. And you know why? I mean, like I will always support our native stable coins, of course, unquestionably. But there is a huge advantage to being able to buy a stablecoin on Coinbase and send it directly to your just a tax administration from a tax administration standpoint. Huge advantage to be able to buy on Coinbase, send it directly to your Cardano wallet, and then buy things in Cardano without having to record a damn line in your taxes explaining whether or not you saw a gain or a loss in the time that you sent that from that asset from Coinbase to your wallet and then purchase something with it. Like it's to me, that's one of the biggest advantages of stable coins for the average person. The average person in retail, a giant advantage is just not having to record that gain or loss in your taxes every time you want to buy something. So the ultimate for me, of course, would be for those purposes, if they would just put USDM on Coinbase, if we could just buy USDM on Coinbase and then send that to our Cardano wallets. But obviously, Coinbase is not trying to promote any stablecoin other than USDC. USDC is their baby. They're trying to promote that one, of course. So, and for good reason. We all know, we've talked about it recently on this channel. Stable coins are good money. They're good money makers for the entities that control them. Tether is like the most profitable business per employee ever and would be gigantic. It would be gigantic in the list of banks if we called it a bank. Oh, J. Marie actually saw the dish brain at Rare Evo. That is insane. That is insane. I would like to have seen that. That is insane. Emilio says more integrations, more acceptance, more adoption. That's the argument. That's the argument. Like there's definitely an argument in crypto always that you should integrate everything, be connected, hyperconnectivity, all those things. And I think, to some extent that's true. It may not be as true as people think. Like I think if we just got USDC in Cardano, it would be good. We should definitely strive to get that, but I don't think it would do all the things people think it's going to do. I think people think it's going to drive our TVL to the moon in our DeFi platforms. And I mean, surely it's going to be impactful, but I think the reason people aren't using the DeFi platforms is that the incentives to use the DeFi platforms aren't strong enough given how good Cardano staking already is. So Do Not Use has been enjoying and listening to the show. Smacked that like on my way in. Noticed how the market is bleeding and it is holding on while Zcash is pumping. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Definitely, I've noticed the privacy, sort of the privacy trend has gotten stronger and stronger over the last couple of weeks. Privacy has definitely been like a hugely trending topic in crypto. So, I mean, crypto is such a trend narrative kind of thing. We have these like constant narratives about different trends and everything is totally focused on that. So I think this is like always going to be the case in crypto. We're just always going to be contending with the latest trend in crypto, apparently, based on what's happened so far. I probably already addressed this question, but I think it's because the incentives aren't good enough. You're taking on too much risk given the riskless yield in base layer Ouroboros staking. That's the problem. The staking is too good. It's like, why go further out on the risk curve when you can just stake? You can just delegate as a normal on the normal Cardano network. It's like, why go out on the risk curve? Jordan for America, thank you for joining us. Glad you got out of softball on time. D-Not uses, I did make a report on the video with the fake Charles, but I'm sure YouTube is behind them videos. No way YouTube is able to flag a second of audio, but is unable to catch a video with a QR code in it. Yeah, this has been the big mystery. How can YouTube not control those videos? How are they not able to control those videos? It's incredible to me. I do not understand. Do you think using Grok is risky from a privacy standpoint? I think using any kind of any platform like that, any gigantic platform. I mean, these are gigantic platforms. Like, I don't know the latest daily usage numbers on Grok, but the number of daily users of any of these AI platforms is so big that yeah, there's definitely risk. So, you know, lots of different types of risk too. There's sort of like entity risk, like, is the platform going to do things with your information that you don't want it to? And then there's also just like hacking risk, you know, like everything seems to get hacked. So I wouldn't be at all shocked if, you know, we find out one day, you know, blank AI platform got hacked and the hackers have access to every chat you've ever had with that AI. I think all those things are possible. Okay. AOS, I remember when I originally decided to delegate on you, we had this girl, Mika NFT and Metaverse Fantasy. I missed that time almost. We had these girl Mika NFTs. I don't think I ever knew about any girl Mika NFTs. But oh, are you talking about I used to have when Jay Crypto would come on the show, he would tell me about the latest AI girlfriend trends. Maybe that's what you're referencing. But yeah, I miss the metaverse boom as well. I miss it as well. I still love metaverses, but you know, making that business model sustainable was the part that didn't seem to work out. So I think our big hope right now is Infinity Rising. So I'm hoping they have figured out the trick to make that sustainable. So at Cardano says, also in Cardano generally, I found we're more risk averse, possibly an oxymoron. Yeah, no, I think we are. I think Cardano is a little bit different. Cardano is a little less degen-y. You know what I mean? If you're a 19-year-old DeFi degen, how could you not be on, you know, how could you not be in the EVM world or the Solana VM world? Like, you would be. If you're a 19-year-old degen, you're going to be over there for sure. You know, if we're lucky, maybe they would step foot into the Cardano universe also, but really they're going to be over there in that world. So, I mean, I think that's what it is. And Cardano is not full of 19-year-old DeFi degens for sure. Cardano universe says we have some spies in here. Always assuming they're spies. You know, I don't really know the answer to that question. I don't know. In terms of safety, I mean, would they like more liquidity? Absolutely. We know that from governance actions, they would definitely like more liquidity. To what extent? How do we quantify how that impacts safety? I'm doing air quotes around the word safety. I don't know. I'll leave that to the experts to explain to us. I wouldn't dare even speculate on that. So I mean, you know, my policy though on all those things is that I always keep custody of my assets. If I don't want to lose my assets, I never give up custody of them because I'm afraid of being lobster trapped. So anytime any platform asks me to give them assets, custody, access, and custody of my assets, my answer is always no. So there you go. To everyone in chat, you don't need to look at charts for Cardano when the amount of subscribers in this channel hits 24,000. Then we're at the beginning of the true bull market. Best predictive tool. Thank you, John Polo. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think you can. I don't think there's any guarantee that. I mean, I do believe that Elon would do everything he could to, honor our privacy expectations. I think it would be very. I couldn't see him being intentionally malicious about our privacy with Grok, or being extremely negligent. This will be controversial because some people hate Elon and they would say the opposite, but I can't see him being extremely negligent about our privacy expectations. But what we know is that mistakes happen, bad decisions get made, hacks occur. So yeah, I don't think you can feel like there's a guarantee that that data would never be exposed, right? How many listeners tuning in compared to commentators in chat? Oh man, so the maximum concurrent number, it's like, sometimes it's like 20 times as many people listening, total, after it's recorded. It might be 20 times as many people listening as we have like concurrent maximum listeners, but the it's many times, many times the number of people will listen to it after we're done live as the people who listen to it live. So do not use says I mostly listen. Mon KG says, when my husband died, I talked to Grok and he helped a lot with the grief. Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of privacy expectation I think is like most important, those kind of things. And I think honestly, I think that's the kind of stuff that Elon would be most worried about. I think he would be most worried. I don't want to speak for him. Obviously, I don't know the guy, but I feel like he's the kind of person that you this kind of concern would resonate with him, and he wouldn't want to sort of betray that kind of privacy expectation. So I hope nothing like this ever happens. I hope nothing ever happens with Grok where you have to worry about that. Everybody asked some questions. We do have one more tab. We have one more tab we can hit before we get out of here. Flying Hambone says, I hope to God I'm not the suspected spy. I will leave and leave you all alone if you prefer. I don't think you are a suspected spy. I've never thought to myself, is Flying Hambone a spy? I've never thought that. A member of the army of spies, certainly, but not the kind of spy that was being referenced. Ada Eclipse, I don't even know if I trust USDC or Tether. Yeah, I used to have a lot of reservations about Tether for sure. I followed their sort of banking, drama when they were constantly changing banks. Like this week it was like the bank of blank in the Caribbean, and the next week it was like another bank of something in the Caribbean. They were kind of jumping around, kept getting kicked out of their banking relationships apparently. So obviously things are very different now, but yeah, I know what you're saying. Oh, sorry, it was Micah NFT. Oh, you're talking about the Cardano City NFTs. Yeah, her name was Mika, right? It was like MIKKA, or maybe it was, yeah, it was. Oh, okay, I know exactly what you're talking about. So that was like the first, that was the first NFT collection that came out that looked like it was going to be sort of a metaverse, and it had the female character, really cool imagery of Charles as kind of like this cyberpunk guy wearing some VR goggles, really cool artwork. And the character, the Mika character you're talking about, was kind of it was some very cool artwork. And then the question started coming up, like, is this actually going to be a metaverse, or is this just art NFT? And eventually they sold some units, like apartment units, and they were, it seemed like they were, the contents of the units were sort of procedurally generated the same way other NFTs would be. And some people would have it seemed like some people would have too many like boxes too many like boxes that look like they were just like empty moving boxes in the room. So somebody photoshopped at the height of all that, somebody photoshopped a picture, an image of a room that was nothing but the moving boxes. Like normally there'd be like a bed, a lamp, maybe a poster on the wall or something. And then somebody photoshopped one that was nothing but moving boxes, which was one of the more hilarious moments from the last cycle to me. Elon had his robot Optimus dance today, and I was impressed. Oh, I didn't see that. I would like to see that. Hugs, not rugs. What's up? Thank you for joining. We met once at a party of social influencers, and you were the only one I recognized there. And now I follow all of you guys. It definitely. Who are you talking to? I don't think you're talking to me because I definitely have not been at a party of social influencers where anybody could recognize me. So maybe you're talking to somebody else in the chat. I think. It definitely was not me. Yeah, I think you must be talking about somebody else in the chat, because it definitely was not me. At Cardano says, that Cardano city drop was so hit and miss. I didn't get a room. You didn't even get one of the rooms with the empty boxes in it. That's hilarious. Kopi is migrating to Infinity Rising and offering. Okay, I don't know anything about the coin. I actually don't know anything about the coin, the Kopi coin, but Uncle Thanos says Cardano City Lobster Trap. Yeah, I have absolutely never been to a crypto influencer party, and there are no crypto influencers who know who I am. So, and I've definitely never been to one with Becker. I would actually, if Becker was going to be at one, I might I might consider going incognito. But and this did not happen. This is not something that happened in the past. But I would actually consider going to one and then just like going incognito and not saying who I am. But I've definitely never been to one. And I've definitely never been to any party where anybody knew who I was. So it definitely wasn't me, is what I'm saying. I'm absolutely positive. Cardano Universe is talking about the migration. Okay, let's go to the last tab. Guys. I promise that wasn't me at the party you're talking about, though. It sounds like an awesome party. I wish I was at this party, actually. Becker screamed at me for buying Pico Top Ada. Does this not sound like an awesome party? I would have loved to have been to that party, but I was not. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm big enough to even have imposters. Although somebody from the channel, a member of the Army of Spies, somebody who watches the channel, actually hit me up once, and they said, "Hey, there's a Cardano get together." It was in Miami. I think it was in Miami or somewhere in Florida, and they were like, I have one of the Army of Spies T-shirts, and last time I wore it, people asked me if I was you. So I'm gonna wear it again at this next meetup. Is it okay if I just tell people I am you? And I was like, totally do it. Do it. Definitely do it. So that person went to this party, and when people started asking them, like, "Oh, are you the Army of Spies guy?" They were like, "Yep, that's me, totally me," which I thought was genius, because it only further obscures my identity if I've got these like red herring AOSs running around going to parties. So this guy was in Florida. So Mon KG, it definitely, I don't think it was him, unless he also went to one in Texas, but he never mentioned going to Texas to me. But I have definitely never been to a crypto party in Texas. I can guarantee you that. I've never been to any crypto party. I've been to very few crypto parties, and none where anybody knew who I was. Let me put it that way. Well put. I think people laugh at George's intro. What does he say on Cryptos R Us? He says, I'm George, we are all George. But actually, I like the sentiment. It's very, people laugh about it. It's very, people make fun of it. I'll put it that way. But actually, I like the sentiment. And it's true. We all are in the Army of Spies. For the record, I've said this many times on the channel, but the Army of Spies is definitely not me. It's all the people who watch this show. That's for sure what that name refers to. So I thought this was kind of an interesting commentary since we talked about prediction markets recently. I think last night we talked about prediction markets. So I thought this was very interesting commentary. So Bitcoin Magazine posted kind of a funny market on Polymarket. Just in, there's now a 48% chance Bitcoin hits 1 million before GTA 6 releases, according to Polymarket. Then you got this very smart post by Charles Guillemet, and he's the CTO at Ledger. If you don't know who he is, he posts a lot when stuff's going on with Ledger. You'll see posts from him. He's the actual CTO at Ledger, the hardware wallet device. And I think he was remembering back. You might remember this too. There was a thing that happened where guys were making Polymarket markets, and I'll describe this euphemistically. The market was, will a kind of kind of firm, kind of not, we'll call it a green stick. Will a kind of firm, kind of not green stick fly onto the court during this WNBA game? Then they would just they would bet on yes, and then just go to the game and throw this large green stick onto the court during the game, and then they would win the market. Their side would win the market, right? Their prediction would turn out to be true because they made it come true. So Charles here has a really good point. If the market looks like this, couldn't the GTA 6 developers just take the bet and then make sure that GTA 6 is very, very late, right? Which it's likely to be anyways. But I think this is one of the problems with some of these prediction markets is it's a little bit too late to rig, not the market, but rig the outcome. That's right. And Cardano has its own prediction market. Nope, I definitely do not have a twin brother. I definitely do not. I promise you that. I do not have a twin. Plus, I don't think that would help anyways because nobody knows what I look like. So, but yeah, it definitely wasn't me. If somebody, I kind of like it. If somebody actually told you they were me, I kind of like that because it probably means there was more than just the one guy who I congratulated for being an imposter. I hope there were many out there. That would have been great if there were many last cycle running around and everybody met somebody who they think is me. That would be perfect for obscuring my actual identity. But it definitely wasn't me or a twin. Why does Charles think it's so vital that Laos is released in 2026? Honestly, what I really think is that it's exactly what JJ Seiler was describing in his birthday wish to Charles. So last night on the show, I read JJ's birthday sort of tribute to Charles, and in that post, he basically said like my birthday wish for Charles is that the rest of the world understands, what I understand about Charles. I'm paraphrasing here. What I understand about Charles, and that's that, he named several very positive attributes of Charles, but among them was that from his perspective, Charles feels this very strong duty to, basically like improve the condition of his fellow humans. So I think Charles feels an immense obligation to get Cardano to the point we all want it to get. He feels his obligation, I think, to all, to all humans to make a contribution to humanity, but especially to us in Cardano. I think he feels a pretty big obligation to get Cardano to that point we all sort of expected it to be. Like we all expected Goguen smart contracts. We all expected Voltaire governance, and we all expect Laos, this scaling, input endorsers, and true, he's the one that crafted those expectations. Like we expect those things because, we expect those things because he told us to expect them. He told us to expect those things. That's why we sort of expect those things. But I think that's why he wants Laos. I think he doesn't want to disappoint us. He wants to meet our expectations, honestly. We all have decentralization derangement syndrome anyway. Probably true. Probably true. So James said, "Monkey, you trolling?" And Monkey G says no. At Cardano says, "Send me an AOS shirt and I'll tell everyone I'm you." So I took the link down, but maybe I'll have to design new ones. I'll have to design new ones and make the link available. Okay. Flying Hambone says, "I'll just make sure to use Army of Spies Triple X." the Triple X version of Army of Spies. Scarlet Pimpernel. Omar Wright says, "You do sound like the altcoin Daily Brothers." I am definitely not one of the altcoin Daily Brothers. AOS Among Us. Anyone see the Twitter rant today that he's quitting Cardano because of Charles' post about the mayor that won New York City? I saw that. That kind of shocked me. I was like, out of all the controversies we've had, out of all the controversial Charles posts, this is the one that makes you want to quit Cardano. I thought that one was actually like, it was obviously, in jest. It's like, I thought that was actually kind of lighthearted poking fun at Mom Donnie. I didn't even think that one was that. I didn't even think Mom Donnie fans would be that insulted by that one, honestly. So, okay. Speaking of Laos for 2026, have you heard any more about SpaceX? Okay, so Charles addressed this. Charles said he said something kind of cryptic, and it was sort of like the upshot of it was sort of like, we couldn't fit that into the 2025 budget. So take from that what you will. I think one of the there's a lot of possibilities there. One of the cool ones is that they were going to put a Cardano node in orbit. That's something that would definitely probably involve a expenditure out of the the IOG budget or some other budget in Cardano. So maybe it's that. Maybe it's something cooler. I don't know. I think that's pretty cool though. Oh, there we go. Yeah, you guys kind of solved the mystery here. Monk KG says that's who it was. Altcoin Daily. Altcoin Daily. For some reason, I thought it was you. Yep, I am definitely not one of the Altcoin Daily brothers. That is not me. I think they're okay though. I think those guys are okay. Mr. I Webco DMS, welcome. Good evening. William Alfred Pazin. Is that the person who rage quit? Flying Hampone says, Memdani makes me want to sell my house and move to New York City. Is it because the memes are going to be too good? Ada Eclipse says, the shirts say, I am AOS. What if the new version of the shirt just has a name tag? It just has like an image of a name tag on the left chest that says, I am AOS. And then everybody who buys it can just go to Cardano meetups and claim their AOS. I mean, I would feel guilty. I would feel like I had to pay everybody else to do that because that would be such a huge benefit to me. So then I could wear the shirt also and go to meetups and be incognito because word would get around that the people wearing that shirt are definitely not AOS, definitely not the person behind this channel. So, Monk KG says, if you think you're small, bro, I follow you before I knew who any of those guys were. Didn't even know what NFTs were before that night. So you were, thank you. Thank you for saying that, Monk KG. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. I appreciate you saying that very much. That means a lot to me. It's a free world. He can take his toys elsewhere, but agreed. It was a fun post, not meant to be mean-spirited. Regardless, communism and socialism seem to be at odds with the permissionless, trustless. Yeah, I tend to agree. Skate 4 is pretty cool and it's free. Is that just like a non sequitur? Was that in response to something, or did you just want everybody to know Skate 4 is cool and free? I did not know that Skate 4 was free. So if it's cool and free, that's kind of right up my alley. I'm definitely interested in things that are cool and free, as I think all people should be. So that is right in my interest wheelhouse. His name was Robert Paulson. If you are too young to have seen that movie, Google Tyler Durden. Google Tyler Durden. Can we make them and distribute them ourselves? If people will really get them, I will make them. That'd be pretty funny. We'll have to see. Last time it's kind of surprising. Like, it's kind of surprising how few of them actually get distributed. Need the shiny mask. Bunch of people can wear them. That would be funnier if we sold the t-shirts along with those masks. That's an interesting idea. If I could find those masks in bulk and make the price worth it. The problem is when you do those, the quantities that people actually buy always end up being so low that it's like too expensive. It's too expensive, even if you take out, most of the profit margin. The products themselves always end up being pretty small because the volume is small. So you go to sell them and it looks like you're selling this like hugely overpriced product, and just because the volume, so few people actually end up buying them. But let's see. Oh wait, first, Fight Club says, or Frazek Atsiantov says, Fight Club for the win. Yep, absolutely. Great movie. Formative movie for me. Flying Hambone says, I'm just a relatively young progressive, and crypto wealth is secondary to good life for all Americans as far as I'm concerned. If I didn't feel that way, I'd already be on my way to Europe with my ADA. Yeah, I mean, I think the good thing about Cardano is everybody's welcome here, regardless of your political stance. Like, the thing we all have in common is not, but definitely our interest in, I would argue, decentralization, and sort of like decentralization and the compromise we've reached between the other legs, decentralization and the other legs on the crypto trilemma. That's a great way of putting it. If everybody had the t-shirts, then AOS would truly be decentralized in the meetup world. That'd be great. First rule of AOS Club: you do not talk about AOS. I like it. No, it doesn't. It doesn't even need to be a Kickstarter. They're pretty easy to do. It's just that in the past when I did them, the volume was very, very low, so it made it like not worth it to do it. And it was like, the prices always look so high on those, even when you take out, a lot of the profit involved. The prices are high because the volume's so high, or the volume's so low. So it just like looks like you're trying to be a profiteer, and the volume actually ends up being pretty low. So that was the main problem. Some 067 says, I need one of those support groups for this price action. He's talking, if you haven't seen the movie, in Fight Club, there's this whole ongoing thing with these support groups and people going to support groups who don't actually suffer the problem. Like, people are going to, I'm going to mess up the exact organs, but people are going to, like, support groups that have to do with like pancreatic disease, and also going to like the support groups for various other diseases, just because they like the atmosphere of support groups, basically. Secret club. It would definitely be a secret club. James offers the front should say I'm AOS. The back should say we're all AOS. Or maybe the front should say I'm AOS, and the back should just say no, I'm really AOS, and then it'd be more convincing. The many-faced god of spies. I like it. I will buy an AOS meme. No, I would feel, Rulu, I appreciate you saying that, but I would feel too guilty. I would feel too guilty when it crashes. And then I would spend all my spare time trying to think about ways to create utility for the meme coin. It would just be too much guilt. I would feel too much guilt at people losing money. The thing I try really hard not to do is that. Mr. iWeb DMS says, I got testicular cancer. Is that true? Or if so, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if that's true. Or are you just referencing Fight Club? Rulo says, nah, mate, we will burn it together. There we go. There we go. Okay, Fight Club reference. Okay, great. Glad to hear that. Glad to hear that. Oh, thank you, Flying Hambone. I appreciate it. Flying Hambone says, I switched my stake pool to AO because I know you're real and alive compared to all the others. I'm definitely a real live person. I'm definitely a real live person jumping on here and talking about Cardano all these nights. So, you know what? I think we've kind of reached the end. I think we've reached the end of the news for the day. Unless somebody can come up with a good topic that they think we all need to discuss before we get ready to finish out the week here, then we'll kind of march onward toward a good weekend. But I hope everybody had a great week. This has been a tough couple of weeks, so I hope everybody is kind of managing these difficult times in crypto well. I hope everybody's managing that well. If anybody's having a real hard time with it, it's definitely better to figure out how to deal with that, than to, do anything drastic out of sadness. So I hope everybody's dealing with that well. But I hope everybody, despite all the difficulty in crypto, I hope everybody had a good, had a survivable couple of weeks. I hope everybody's looking forward to a really good weekend. Hope everybody has a good weekend. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere and we're coming into those cold months, I hope everybody is managing to get out and about and do some fun things before we get to the real cold part. If you're down in the Southern Hemisphere, I guess you're coming into the warmer months. If so, good for you guys. But I hope everybody's doing great, and I'll talk to you soon.